I am here for all of you out there that want to know the answer to the age-old question. Was math discovered or invented? I know, a crazy question. But before I begin, we have a special announcement from our sponsor, Audible.com. So, was math invented or discovered? Let's see, most people fall into two categories. Math was a phenomenon invented to make sense of the world around us. The second, math was discovered as we found object has values that can help us solve problems.
So I think math was discovered, and I'm gonna give a couple reasons why I think that. And of course, I'm gonna be giving a couple counter examples just so I could debate it out in the video. So, if you believe math was discovered, that means you believe in Platoism. And just to get it out of the way, dictionary.com says that math is the systematic treatment of magnitude, relations between figures and forms, and relations between quantities expressed symbolically. Now, the relationships between two objects was discovered, not invented. I'm just saying this, just for the sake of saying it. So one of my examples that's gonna help me debate out the point that math is discovered is the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem is the correlation between the sides of a right triangle. The equation a squared plus b squared equals c squared was invented to show that correlation. Now, the thing is, the correlation between the triangle already existed. We just slapped on a label, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And another point is the fact that we compared the equation to real life, which the stuff or triangles already existed in. Before I go any deeper, I think math is the actual value behind the labels we give it. And so, with the Pythagorean theorem, the a squared plus b squared equals c squared is just a label. How do we know it's true? Is because we compared it to a real life triangle that already existed. And since it already existed, that means we had to have discovered it. Because otherwise, that would be just saying we coincidentally invented equations that just so happen to fit every right triangle in the world. Now, if I said that math is the label, which means that the a squared plus b squared plus c squared was invented, the Pythagorean theorem, that would lead kids to think things like this.
Gravity was invented, right?
Obviously, gravity wasn't invented. We just slapped on the label gravity onto the actual force of gravity. Just like with the Pythagorean theorem, we just slapped on the label a squared plus b squared equals c squared and just said we invented it. But in reality, the equation already existed. We just slapped on the label. When I asked my teacher what math is, this is what she told me.
I don't know what math is.
Obviously, if she gave me a much clearer answer, I would be on one side or another. Like, I wouldn't even need to make this video if she told me what math is. Here's a short break brought to you by Steven.
Hit it harder.
So for my next example, I'm going to use the cos and sine functions that we learned in pre-calculus. My class learned that cos and sine graphs, when graphed, make a wave-like pattern. We use this function to represent certain phenomena in reality, like DNA, tides, wavelengths, etc. Just like the Pythagorean example, the math behind the function already exists in real life. I mean, it's not like we made the function and then all of a sudden it became a reality, like the titles didn't change before we made the function. The most important part of the discovery of math is the values of numbers and the equations that represent the world around us. A great example of this is a philosophical thought experiment. If a tree falls in a forest and if nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? just like our question, was math invented or discovered, it depends on the person who is judging. Humans only know how much they know. So obviously, according to the experiment, since nobody heard it, no one knows it exists. But in reality, the sound was made. The written language of math is like the sound of the tree falling. There are different ways to perceive it. No matter what name you gave a number, the value that name represents will still exist.
And up next, we have Max. Here we go.
Get off the stage.
Hey, I just met you.
You're trash.
It was crazy.
You sing like a girl.
Shut up. And you can
Get off the stage.
My school. Time for people to see what I can do.
You can say math was invented because it was how we perceive the world. While true, it spirals downward with everything becoming subjective. If that were the case, is the sky really blue because you see it that way? To another person, it may be red. Putting everything together, I can explain how math was discovered by using simple mathematics like addition. Addition, the act or process of joining something to something else as defined by the Merriam-Webster. So, when I have one apple and someone gives me another apple, how many apples do I have? It's not your question, don't worry. It would be 2 apples. Some people would counter this by saying that's because we invented the number system. What if I call 2, 3, or a dos? Sure, but the value behind your 3 quotes or dos would be my 2. The math behind the numbers would remain the same. Let's say each apple weighs 2 pounds. No matter what you call 2 or 3, if I have 2 apples, they would weigh 4 pounds together. They would feel the same when being held.